The Adventures of Tintin, by some counts, the world's most translated comic series, is now back in the limelight with the launch of a colorized edition of the 90-year-old version of the Blue Lotus. Now, the mystery finds the comic book reporter following an opium smuggling ring from India to China, with stops in other countries. Tintin never made it to Taiwan, but his creator did in 1973, and it was seen as a nod to Taiwan's comic book industry, which is now experiencing somewhat of a revival. So we're taking this opportunity to take a look at what's behind Tintin's longevity and what other countries can take away from it. I'm Divya Gopalan, and you're watching Connected on TaiwanPlus. Tell us about your favorite comic and let us know whether it's to the test of time by dropping us a comment on our social media. And while you're doing that, let me introduce you to our guests. We are joined in Taipei by Philippe Tzou, Trade and Investment Commissioner for Belgium's Wallonia Export Investment Agency in Taiwan, and Debkumar Mitra, a mathematician turned artist, joining us from Kurukshetra city in North India's Haryana state. Now, he's currently a comics editor and graphics narrative instructor at the National Institute of Design in India. Thank you, gentlemen, for being part of the program. I'm going to start with you, Philippe, and just ask you, what's an investment agency got to do with comics?
Okay, thank you for having me on the show. So we're helping Belgian companies to export to Taiwan and then attract Taiwanese investors to the region of Wallonia in Belgium. And then we work with the French-speaking government of Belgium, basically promoting comics, promoting any cultural and artistic export to Taiwan, basically, and collaboration in all these different fields, such as music, such as art, such as comic industry, etc. Yeah.
Right, and Debkumar, it is much easier to make that connection with you being with the Institute of Design, but can you tell us why Tintin is so famous in India and still so popular?
One of the biggest reasons that Tintin's popularity is, it in fact started in my old city of Kolkata, where I come from, which is in the eastern state of West Bengal. And it had West Bengal had a long tradition of comics reading. And we are actually celebrating centenaries of two stalwarts this year. One is Narayan Devnath, and the other one is Mohit Chaudhary. And I think around 80s when Tintin was first translated and launched in Bengal, these two people had already had their run. So because of the storytelling, the adventure, it was first published as a serial in a children's magazine called Anando Mela, where it was translated. And it is, in fact, from the very first issue, it became a hit. My brush with Tintin is, though I do not know a word in French other than merci, I picked up a French edition of the Tintin at our National Library and at the children's reading room, and I got fascinated then. So I acquired some of the translated edition. Since then, I have been very long Tintin fan, though I have got other interests, and I'm very much into other kinds of Belgian comics, and Franco-Belgian tradition is something that I mostly teach, and that's what we discuss during my instructions.
I thought I'd take this opportunity to jump in where you mentioned the Franco-Belgian, the comic tradition there. Now, Philippe, you come from Belgium. It's the country that gave us Tintin and the Smurfs. Let's not forget those little blue guys. Why has Belgium managed to make itself a comic powerhouse? And does it still have that legacy?
Yes. The story of Tintin actually goes together with the history of comics industry in Belgium, because Tintin actually started in 1920s in actual newspapers as comic strips that were inserted in newspapers, and Belgium has a tradition of being humoristic and satiric. So the first comic strips in Belgian French-speaking newspapers were satiric to the politics and to the society of Belgium and Europe in general. So, and this industry hasn't changed that much. So Belgians always think that we don't take ourselves very seriously. So using comics to express ourselves was the best way to use it with humor to become critics of the politics and of the society with humorous and graphic ways of expressing yourself. So yeah, that industry has evolved very much. And today we say that there's about 500 to 700 comics artists in Belgium, and it's still one of the largest in the creative industry, one of the largest sectors that is still flourishing. Yeah, so it's still very much the case today. Yes.
Debkumar, mixing satire and politics is something that India is very good at, along with India's great tradition of storytelling. I remember reading Amar Chitra Kada when I was a child. Can you tell us how that's all kind of come together in India's current day comic industry?
The issue is that for a very long time, since it was launched in the early 60s, Amar Chitra Kada ruled the roost. And then suddenly, I think mid-60s it could be, Lee Fox, Phantom, and Mandrake were translated and launched by, they were translated, initially they were in English with covers made suitable, and they were not issued as strips, but they appeared as a whole comic of 36 pages. And they were weeklies, and they were distributed free. And so what happened was, because of this, it became a rage. So Amar Chitra Katha was, in fact, while it was for younger children, a little grown-up population started to pick up on Phantom and Mandrake and on all those characters. In fact, India later, the same group later developed the first Indian so-called superhero called Bahadur, which was Bahadur and Bela was the combination. Bela was the partner of Bahadur, and they had their own adventures. That carried on for some time, for suddenly till the 1990s. But in between, the arrival of Tintin actually changed the game, at least as far as India is concerned, on the eastern part of India I'm talking about. Obviously, Hindi are the most spoken language in India. In Hindi, there has been a long tradition. There have been superheroes. There have been many other, also in the down south, in places like Tamil Nadu, where lots of French comics are translated and in Tamil, and they've got very good readership. In our southernmost state, in Kerala, they have also the same thing. But the whole thing, there isn't I won't say there is a movement for comics. India can't match Belgium or France or UK or US or Japan, or even, I don't think that it can match the current status of manhwa and then the web comics of Korea, or even smaller countries as far as comics is concerned, largely because of comics reading in these countries are also, adults consume a lot of comics. In India, the focus of the publishers have been only children. So gags, not so much serious material. If I read comics, or if I read Tintin, Hergé has been successful. I mean, there are a lot of diplomatic issues, there are a lot of other issues, a lot of politics which he has brought into Tintin that has become, that has made the character much more endearing. I mean, he has got an universal appeal wherever you go. I mean, I picked up small places of geography, and I was astounded by the correctness in depicting those places. Then I learned that he studied a lot of National Geographic and picked up things from there, and the research was very intense. These things are not exactly happening in India.
Right.
Currently, there is an upsurge, but that is mostly fueled by manga.
Interesting. Okay, so on that note, let me bring it back to Taiwan. You talk about all the places that Tintin has endeared itself to. Two things here, Philippe. You've spoken about a huge rights, or you've mentioned previously about huge rights fee behind Tintin. So what's that effect in Taiwan? And secondly, now that it's coming into public domain in the US, what does that mean for Tintin comics and Tintin stories?
Right. Okay, so the issue of publishers' rights, authors' rights of Tintin in Taiwan is mainly commercial. So indeed, Tintin is a rather expensive IP. So it's a rather expensive authors' rights to buy. So in the past, let's say 5-6 years, publishers in Taiwan have not renewed basically their purchase of the author's rights of Tintin. So we haven't seen recent publishing of Tintin's works, but there has been 2 publishers in Taiwan that have bought those rights and published them in different formats in Taiwan. One of the latest formats came in these blocks of books that basically you have maybe 4 or 5 Tintin in the same books. The effects is different because you don't really have, let's say, this beautiful back cover that has all of the albums in the back. So Tintin is less popular in Taiwan for a very, very obvious reason, because the Taiwan comic strip market is dominated by Japanese manga. And then also we have a rising, let's say, rising market share of Taiwanese endogenous domestic comics that is becoming more and more popular, apparently taking up almost 20-25% of the market.
Right, and that is going to be part of our conversation a little later in this program. But before we do that, I'd like to take a look at the business of comics in figures. An estimate by Markets.us, it's a market research company, clocks the global comic books market growing from $17.1 billion in 2024 to $28.7 billion by 2034. Now, that's a compound annual growth of more than 5%, with printed comic books still growing steadily ahead of digital comics. Debkumar, you're engaging a lot with the younger generation, especially in the line of your work. What do they want, and why does it seem like globally still the paper version of comics seems to be doing better?
One of the reasons is comics, despite with all its appeal on the web, people still want to go flip back, come forward, missing some. They must have missed some visual, some particular character must have done something, because, see, comic storytelling is rather complex. It is, the whole book is kind of braided together. It's conceived as, the narrative is conceived first as a whole, and then visuals are interspersed with text, and where the text is also considered to be visual in comics. Without getting into those technical discussion, I can tell you this much, that the reading comics on the web for me has been a little taxing, and that's not because I have grade. It is because or I'm getting older. It is even for the younger generations. We publish an anthology annually called the long form anthology, and that is full of young people's stories, and that has not. The publisher, though they have put it on the Amazon platform, it is not that successful. The printed comics, however, though the numbers are not huge or something, it still outstrips by miles the digital version.
If I could jump in on that.
Yeah.
In Belgium, or at least in European comics, comics usually come in A4 size, and to try to read comics on the computer screen or even on the phone, it's going to be difficult because you have to zoom into each different page, right? So it gives you the feeling of flipping, the easiness to read a comics in French-speaking comic books. It's a lot easier with a physical book than with digital print. So that's one of the main reasons, at least from as far as French comics is concerned. Yeah.
Just to respond to Philippe, the same problem is the kind of storytelling that is happening in India. It's very difficult to see. Because the storytelling is becoming a little more complex with the term graphic novel coming in, though I don't personally like the term, I still call them comics. Graphic novels have a very more complex nature of storytelling, and that actually creates much more difficult to be represented on the web. See, the thing is, you're not dealing with one single hero that you're going to follow through the comics. It could be multiple people with multiple lines of issues and subplots. They come together to tell a story, and that their only print. And I reiterate, only print is the best medium for comics. We have to treat it as an art book. Comics have long suffered this thing of, this is for children, this is juvenile entertainment. It's not. It's proper art form. It should be respected as that. Fortunately, in France and Belgium, it is called the ninth art.
Yeah.
And it is because it is called the ninth art, it gets the respect it gets.
Do you prefer to read your comics on paper or off a screen? Let us know in the comments below. Click the video beside me also for a discussion on what it takes for a comic to travel across cultures. And subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell if you don't want to miss more stories on tech and business from Taiwan.